All right, so get this. Today we're going deep on how to build a marriage that, really lasts, a rock-solid marriage. And guess what? We're getting some of our insights from a pretty unexpected place. A Christian podcast. Yeah, it's called The Sun Inside. And I know you might be thinking, hold on, religion. But trust me on this one. This episode, it might actually have some really good advice. And it's not just for the church crowd. It's for everyone, really. What if the real secret to a strong marriage wasn't just about finding the perfect person, but about making something bigger than both of you, like the foundation of your relationship?
It is interesting. You know how the sun inside really pushes this idea that dedicating your life to God, that's the cornerstone of a really successful marriage.
Right. And they use this word consecration, which, let's be clear, it's not just about going to church on Sundays, right? It's about dedicating every part of your life, your desires, your actions, you name it, to something bigger.
You know, that idea of aligning yourself with something larger than yourself, that can be a powerful force in any relationship. And I don't just mean, romantic relationships.
For sure. And they even talk about how marriage itself becomes this path to becoming more Christ-like. Both people are being shaped into better people through their commitment, not just to each other, but, to God.
You know what? It kind of makes sense when you think about it. When you have this shared purpose or this goal that's outside of just your own little world, it has a way of bringing you closer, right? Think about those couples who volunteer together. A lot of them say they feel closer, more fulfilled, because they're working towards something bigger than themselves.
Love that. And the sun inside is really clear that, your own individual dedication to a higher power, whatever that means for you, that needs to be strong even before you get married. It's like getting your own house in order first.
That actually raises a really good question for everyone. No matter what your beliefs are, how do we create this strong sense of individual purpose and identity? Because when you're secure in who you are and what you stand for, you're not going to put all this pressure on your partner to complete you, which, let's be honest, that's not healthy for anyone.
So true. And the sun inside, they get pretty specific about, what this whole dedicating your life to God thing actually looks like. They quote Deuteronomy 6.5. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength.
Wow, that's pretty intense, huh? Total devotion?
Exactly. And they believe that this love for God should naturally flow into your marriage, blessing your spouse because your heart's already overflowing, so to speak.
It's interesting to think about how that applies outside of religion, too. What if we all focused on, cultivating love and fulfillment within ourselves first? Wouldn't that naturally make our relationship stronger?
Right. You're bringing your best self to the table, which, kind of leads us to the second big idea the sun inside focuses on, dying to self.
Whoa, that sounds kind of dramatic, right? But they explain it in the context of marriage, putting your spouse's needs before your own and just approaching everything with humility.
They actually use this really powerful quote from Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. It's basically about letting go of that ego and embracing, a spirit of service within the marriage.
I mean, whether you're religious or not, that idea really lines up with what makes any relationship work, right? That willingness to compromise, to give back to each other. That's important for romantic relationships, yeah, but also friendships, work relationships, you name it.
Absolutely. And the sun inside even brings up that story of Jesus washing his disciples' feet as this example of putting others before yourself, even in those small everyday things,
Powerful imagery, right? It's like a reminder that true strength often comes from being humble.
Okay, so how do we actually put all this into practice? Well, the sun inside gives some very practical tips for building what they call a God-centered marriage. And you know what? A lot of these tips, they can be adapted for any relationship, no matter what you believe.
All right, I'm all ears. Lay 'em on me.
So they talk a lot about praying together regularly. Now, obviously, that might look different for people who aren't religious, but the principle is the same, right? It's about having this dedicated time to connect on a deeper level, to really share, your hopes and your fears, to support each other emotionally.
Oh, I totally get that. When you have that dedicated time to connect, it builds intimacy, right? You're saying, hey, you're important to me and I want to know what's going on with you.
Absolutely. And then they talk about serving each other intentionally. It's about going out of your way to do those little acts of kindness for your partner, which reinforces that commitment to putting their needs first.
Such a good point. Those little acts of service, big or small, they can speak volumes in any relationship. It's like you're saying, I care about you and I want to make your life a little bit easier.
And it's not always about the grand gestures, right? It's about the little things, too. Making their coffee in the morning, doing the dishes without being asked, offering a back rub after a long day. Those small acts of love, they really add up over time.
You're so right. Those little gestures can be the most meaningful because they show you're putting in the effort consistently. It's not just a one-time thing, it's an ongoing commitment.
Another thing the Sun Inside talks about is um, studying the Bible together. Now, for folks who aren't religious, this could be about finding common ground through, shared interests. Maybe it's reading the same book, watching a documentary together, or even just having those deep conversations about what's going on in the world.
It's all about that shared engagement, right? Finding those activities that spark those good conversations and let you connect on a deeper level, intellectually and emotionally, like you're building this shared world together, one conversation, one experience at a time.
And last but not least, the Sun Inside talks about how important it is to connect with other couples who, prioritize their faith. Again, we can adapt this, right? By building that supportive circle of friends who value strong relationships.
Having that network, people who can offer support and encouragement, that's so valuable for any couple. It's like having a cheerleading squad for your relationship, a group of people who want you to succeed and who can offer advice and perspective when you need it.
So we've covered a lot. What's standing out to you so far from this the Sun Inside podcast?
It's really sticking with me. It's how this podcast, even though it's coming from, a pretty specific Christian perspective, it actually offers some pretty universal truths about relationships, like whether you're religious or not, the importance of dedication, selflessness, shared purpose, community, like those things apply to any partnership.
Couldn't agree more. And the Sun Inside leaves us with this beautiful thought that, by seeing your spouse as above yourself, you're humbling your heart and allowing God's love to flow freely, turning your marriage into, and I'm quoting here, a vessel that pours God's love into a thirsty world.
That is such a powerful image, right? And even if you take out the specifically religious language, the core message is pretty profound. It's about using the strength of your relationship to make a positive impact on the world around you.
Exactly. It's like your love becomes this ripple effect, spreading outwards and touching other people's lives.
And it makes you think about the potential we all have, if we can create these like little pockets of love and support in our own lives, maybe we really can make the world a better place, one relationship at a time.
I love that. It's so inspiring to think about our relationships having that kind of power.
It really is. And it brings us back to something we talked about before, the idea that having that shared purpose, something beyond just the two of you, that can make your bond so much stronger.
Right. It's like finding that common ground, that mission you can both get behind,
Yeah.
and it gives your relationship this deeper meaning, a sense of direction.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be some huge world-changing thing either. It could be something as simple as volunteering at like a local animal shelter or mentoring a young person.
Or even just making a conscious effort to be, kinder and more compassionate to everyone you meet.
Exactly. It's those little things, those small ways to make a difference and doing them together. That's what makes it so powerful.
So in a way, the Sun Inside is suggesting that, a God-centered marriage can be a force for good in the world.
And I think you can take that idea and apply it to any relationship, religious or not. When two people are dedicated to loving and supporting each other and they share that sense of purpose, like they can really create something amazing.
It's like they become this incredible team working together to make a difference.
Exactly. And it's not about being perfect or having it all figured out either. It's about being willing to grow together, to learn from each other, and to strive for something bigger than yourselves.
I think that's a beautiful message to leave our listeners with, whether you're, in a romantic relationship, a friendship, or even if you're just starting to think about what you want in a future partner. Remember the power of shared purpose and outward love.
It's about finding that something bigger than yourselves that you can both, believe in and work toward together. And it's about letting that love and compassion just overflow into the world around you and making a positive impact wherever you go.
All right, so that's part one of our deep dive into the Sun Inside. We've explored consecration, dying to self, some practical tips for building a strong marriage, and this whole idea of your relationship as a vessel for love.
We've only just scratched the surface. I'm really excited to, go even deeper in the next part and see what other insights we can uncover.
Stay tuned.
That old vessel thing, pouring love out into the world, that's a really powerful image.
Right. It makes you think about how Like strong relationships can actually create change way beyond just the couple themselves.
Totally. It speaks to the ripple effect you can have when two people are really committed to, loving and supporting each other.
Like just by being that source of love and strength for each other, they become this force for good.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, about the potential we all have. If we can create those little pockets of love and support, those safe havens, maybe we really can make the world a better place, right?
I love that. It's such a hopeful thought, right? Like our relationships have this power to be transformative, not just for us, but for the people around us.
Absolutely. And it kind of takes me back to what the Sun Inside was talking about, that idea of having a shared purpose, something outside of yourselves that can really strengthen a relationship.
Yes. It's like finding that thing you both believe in, that common ground. It gives your relationship so much more meaning.
It's like a shared mission.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be something, huge and world changing. It could be as simple as volunteering, like at an animal shelter or mentoring someone.
Or even just choosing to be more kind and compassionate in your everyday life.
Right, exactly. It's those little ways you can make a difference. And when you do it as a team, that's what makes it powerful.
So what they're saying is like a strong marriage, one that's focused on something bigger, can actually make the world a better place.
And I think you can apply that to any relationship, really, no matter what you believe. When you're supporting each other and you find that shared purpose, you can create something really incredible.
Like becoming this amazing team working together to make a difference.
Exactly. And it's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about that willingness to grow, to learn from each other, and to aim for something bigger than yourselves.
That's such a great message, especially for anyone, in a relationship or wanting to be someday, no matter what kind of relationship you're in. Remember, shared purpose and outward love, those are powerful.
Find something you both believe in, something bigger than just the two of you, and go after it together. And then let that love, let that compassion, flow outwards. You never know what kind of impact you might have.
We've covered so much today. I feel like we've really unpacked some amazing stuff from the sun inside.
I agree. And I'm ready for even more in the next part. We've still got more to explore.
Can't wait. But for now, let's leave our listeners with, something to think about.
Okay, here's a question for you all. Whether or not you're religious, what is that higher purpose you and your partner could embrace? Something that would not only, strengthen your bond, but also let you make a positive impact on the world.
Ooh, that's a good one. It really makes you think beyond just your own, needs and wants, and consider how your relationship can actually be a force for good.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be this big, complicated thing either. It could be as simple as volunteering once a month or donating to a cause you care about.
Or, like we said before, just being more kind and compassionate in your everyday interactions. Even those little things can make a difference.
For sure. It's all about taking those small steps together and seeing where they lead.
I think the sun inside would definitely agree with that.
Totally. They're all about letting that love flow through your marriage and out into the world.
And even if you're not religious, you can still do that. Cultivating love, generosity, finding that sense of purpose. Those are things anyone can strive for.
It's about realizing that our relationships can be so much more than just, sources of personal happiness. They can be these powerful forces for good, making the world a brighter place.
Okay, so we've covered so much today. I feel like we've really unpacked some amazing insights from the sun inside.
I agree. And I'm ready to, dive into even more wisdom in the next part of our deep dive. We still have more to explore.
Can't wait. But for now, let's leave our listeners with that question about finding their own higher purpose.
It's amazing, right, how much we can learn about relationships, even from a podcast that's, specifically about faith-based marriage.
Right. It just shows you there are these little nuggets of wisdom everywhere, no matter where you look, as long as you're open to, finding them.
Totally. Even if you don't, connect with every single idea, there's usually something you can take away and apply to your own life.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about these deep dives. We get to explore all these different perspectives and pull out those valuable insights.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, there's one more thing I wanted to bring up.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
So we talked a lot about, putting your partner first, serving them, being selfless.
Right. That's a big part of what the sun inside is all about.
But here's the thing, and maybe this is obvious, but it's important to remember that you deserve to be served and cherished too.
Oh, for sure. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
Right. It's all about finding that balance between selflessness and, taking care of yourself.
Exactly. It has to be a two-way street. Both people need to feel loved and supported.
It can't just be all about giving without receiving anything in return.
Right. So, yeah, it's awesome to strive for that selfless love like they talk about in The Sun Inside, but you got to make sure your own needs are being met too, and that means communicating those needs to your partner.
Communication is key. Finding that sweet spot where both people feel, seen and heard and valued.
And I think The Sun Inside would agree with that, even though they don't specifically say it in this episode.
Totally. Because at the end of the day, a healthy relationship is one where both people are actively working together to make it work.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So for all our listeners out there, if you're curious about this whole idea of a God-centered marriage, definitely check out the Sun Inside podcast. And hey, even if you're not religious, there's still a lot of wisdom there. You just have to adapt it to fit your own beliefs.
Totally agree. The most important thing is to, take what resonates with you and apply it to your own life, to your own journey.
And speaking of resonating, we would love to hear what stood out to you from this deep dive. What are your thoughts on building strong relationships? Whether they're based on faith or shared values or something else entirely. Hit us up on social media, send us an email, whatever you prefer. We love connecting with you guys.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those relationships thriving.